There's a possibility this happened 11,000 years ago. Everybody talks about this great flood. And not that it rained from the heavens, but that it came up from the earth.
If parents think that this isn't happening, they need to wake up, because 90% of your children are addicted to this. The more I study my faith, the more I question, what the hell are we even doing? All right, here we go. Welcome to the Josh Leslie podcast. This is the first Jet podcast, which we do not have a name for. Let's welcome to the show Rob O'Rourke.
Pleasure being here, and I think that's one of the things we should get into right away.
Let's do it.
Let's go with the name of the podcast on the Jet. So first off, by the way, kill the music.
Oh, yeah. You don't ever want to hear music
I don't know
all the
if the mics are kicking up to Christian's starting already in the back. One of them. Yeah, there's your one.
Yeah,
you
only get two this whole thing.
You get one left, buddy. All right, so we could either go generic. We could go, jargon of, private jet, the private jet world, we'll call it, right? So something like Wheels Up podcast.
Ooh.
Something like, Christian, what else were we thinking yesterday?
Wheels Up.
Just winging it.
Winging it.
Winging it. I also thought we could go generic, like podcast on a jet.
Ooh, so it's like searchable?
Yeah. So it's searchable, and everybody's like, oh yeah, what's the name of your podcast?
Podcast on a jet.
Podcast on a jet. Just drop. Mic drop.
From 35,000 feet, mic drop.
Yeah. Yeah. Or what else?
40,000 foot mic drop. Nah, don't like it.
That's a long one. That's
too long. Too long.
Yeah. What else could we could mess around with? We said Wheels Up. We thought Cockpit Conversations was maybe a false advertisement on the inappropriate side.
Yeah, let's stay away from the word cockpit. I think maybe like cabin conversations at one point was thrown out, but see, I feel like from a brand perspective, like, okay, cabin could be other things.
Like cabin in a wood.
And then it could be kind of like creepy.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it could be like, that could be a good one for a horror one.
Yeah.
Cabin conversations. You know?
That's like Stephen King's podcast. We could either go A, on the generic side, B, go with jargon of the private jet community. I'm trying to think some other words that are commonly used,
yeah, you could get by with, I don't like the abbreviation PJ, because I feel like that's only used in like a pretentious kind of a way.
True.
But it would be easy for branding, like PJ something something, like it saves you so many letters, right?
PJ podcast.
But
then it doesn't have good branding with it, though.
Yeah. I almost think podcast on a jet.
I think it wins, man.
Or like the Jet podcast. But then I feel like if you say the Jet podcast, I feel like it's about jets. You know what I'm saying? Like that'd be like if I was a jet broker in the aviation community and was like trying to have a podcast about aviation, then that would be cool. But
I think
podcast on a jet.
I think literally just describing it, podcast on a jet, one, it makes it like it sticks in somebody's head. It's searchable. I bet you we could get those domains pretty easy.
I would think.
Yeah. And then same thing with the YouTube channel. It was like, oh, what was that podcast on a jet? And somebody's typing that in. It's like, and they can find it super easy.
Literally podcast on a jet.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that'd be cool.
But you're not sold yet. We got to think of some other ones.
No,
too.
I mean,
you like it.
I like it. Good. Wheels Up is good. Like, it's catchy.
Yes.
It's not as descriptive as podcast on a jet.
No, it's not.
But Wheels Up is catchier. Like if this already had 10 million followers, I'd go with Wheels Up.
Yeah.
Because it's like kind of clever, kind of brandy. like has like a good brand, a good vibe is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Like Wheels Up. I'm the host of the Wheels Up podcast,
Yeah.
where we blah 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 blah. Rather than I'm the host of the Podcast on a Jet podcast.
We would just say I'm the host of
Podcast on a Jet. It already describes it.
You're good.
Yeah. Is that your favorite?
Yeah, I think it's my favorite. We're flying over some mountains right now that have snow on them in June 4th.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
We just had a giant airliner just run right underneath of us.
That was pretty sick. Yeah, and
it was right underneath of us, but I'm sure it was a couple thousand feet.
It was thrown off a chemtrail too. For sure. It was moving quick.
Well, I mean, I don't believe in cloud seeding.
No, I mean, yes.
Who would believe in that conspiracy these days?
Who would?
Yeah.
Who would at all? Okay.
Yeah, we don't talk about that kind of stuff up here.
No, we don't. Never on a jet talking about conspiracies, ever.
No.
That's not what we do here.
No.
All right, so I had this theory. Actually, it's not even my theory, so I can't take credit for it, but I've heard this theory that every, we'll call it 9 to 11,000 years, so about the last 11,000 years ago is the last time it's happened, that the magnetic poles of the Earth reverse, meaning north becomes south and south becomes north. It's shown to happen in the geological record, so we know it's not like somebody's just making this up and they're smoking crack or something like that. It's a real thing. But in that process, the day it reverses in like a day to 3 days. It's very quick. And from what I understand, the crust of the Earth is basically floating on top of the mantle. So when the pole reverses, it's going to do this based off of solar activity. And it's not just that, like, now the compass is going to read north and south differently. It's that the entire Earth's crust actually rotates all the way around. So literally the North Pole rotates down to the South Pole over the crust as it's floating. And what happens is basically the oceans are moving at that speed as well too. And these massive waves just sink everything. And on top of it, mountain ranges get created. There's gaps all over the place because the crust is moving in all these directions. So the working theory is that there's a possibility this happened 11,000 years ago, right at the time when, every ancient culture has this story about the Great Flood. It's prominent in the Bible. It's prominent in most religions, most indigenous, all over the world. Everybody talks about this Great Flood. And not that it rained from the heavens, but that it came up from the earth. Meaning, like, is the water already here? So likely massive waves that just
wiped out civilization as we know, like as they knew it.
Yeah. And so the Navy has this map basically and I can't confirm whether the map is real or not or what they're actually charting, but they're supposedly charting what the future of the continental United States looks like after some kind of massive water event. And basically the areas above like a mile above sea level don't really get touched. So like Colorado's in good shape, but like chunks of Idaho are like maybe okay. Cali's all jacked up. Arizona's jacked up. Florida's gone. Like that whole peninsula's gone. Basically.
Like all the flat Midwest, is it gone? It's like sunk underwater.
There's water that comes into the Midwest. You have like the Appalachian Mountains as well as the Blue Ridge Mountains that still look like they're good over by like, Asheville and like that whole area all the way up.
So what you're saying is move to the mountains now?
Like get above a mile or get close to it anyways. But the working theory being this could have wiped out civilization. And if we were technologically advanced at the time, all the power grid's gone. Our ability to do all types of stuff is just gone. how many people died, probably most, if not like maybe a few left, then, we were talking about this with AI, right? Yeah, that's how we kind of got on the subject, because we were like, all right, right now there's some scary stuff going on. The AI is definitely progressing on like a massive scale, at least what the LLMs are. We don't have general artificial intelligence yet, but how far off is that? 10 years?
Well, and whatever we are exposed to now as the public, you don't think that there's more than that behind the scenes? Of course there is.
Of course there is.
Like, it's not like,
course.
Oh, this is just all randomly coming together at the same time. No, of course not. There's so much more that you can't see. That's one thing's obvious, is that there's so much that we can't see behind the scenes. And my prediction to go along with that is that as AI advances, as technology advances, as social media, even without all the scary robot AI stuff, even just social media, how it's taking over people's lives, I'm hearing more young people, more and more and more, getting super frustrated and fed up with the idea that 5, 6, 7 hours of their day every day is on a screen.
Yes.
I'm not even talking computer screens. I'm talking phone screen time. Think about that. You know what I looked at the other day?
A lot of time.
You know what I looked at the other day? On my own damn screen time, 4 hours. I'm just going, what?
Yeah.
On my own cell phone. And I use my laptop the majority of the day, which means
Me too.
More of my hours that I am awake are spent on a screen than not.
Yes.
No wonder we're all going psycho and have anxiety out the roof compared to, years ago and things like that. My prediction is an entire subsection of the U.S. population, maybe even global, is going to get so fed up with screens and technology that they're just going to go back and say, screw it. We're doing away with that.
Are you thinking like Amish style, where literally we're like, no electricity? Or are you thinking keep electricity?
No, electricity is too convenient.
It's way too convenient.
So is everything else, but it's hard to make the quantum leap that electricity is ruining my life. But it's pretty easy to say that social media, all of the negative effects of that are ruining my life, or the addiction of it. I'm not addicted to electricity, but I am to the dopamine hit that your phone gives you or that the internet gives you.
Yeah,
I think it'll be an anti-internet, anti-connection. Think about this. I was telling my wife last night, if you, if the tree falls in the forest and nobody heard it, did it really fall? Okay, same idea. If you didn't know, if you never had any movies, no TV, no news, and no social media, what would your reference group be in life as far as like feeling negativity about progress, results, success? Sometimes I get fed up with the idea that we're pursuing, like everyone's pursuing all the same shit, but then when they get it, they just move the goalposts.
It's not enough.
I think that we have an entire generation that's being raised on social media thinking that the goal is fame, money, power, success.
Yeah.
Even packaged nicely. I mean, and I just don't think that's the answer. And so the only way to figure that out is to remove yourself from the noise. So how do you unplug yourself from the noise? You can't beat an addiction. Like if you're a crack addict, you can't just put crack in your pocket and be like, I won't touch it. I'll only have a little bit today.
Yeah. I'll only smoke one rock. Yeah.
Like that doesn't make any sense.
No.
So it's a complete unplug from anything to do with other people's noise on the internet, which I think means you go without the internet.
So, okay. Let's say this ideal community is set up where you basically have so everything's off grid, meaning, but you still have like solar power and heat generation, your ability to have gas and all that stuff. So you can power everything up, but your community has one like comm center, like your communication center, where if you need to get in touch with the outside world, you can go to the comm center and get in touch.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to like the level that I like to go to, which is like apocalyptic times, or it's like, hey, how do you retreat away from literally all of society? I grew up in a small 1,000 person town. I still have a house there. Like, I understand what that's kind of like in a weird way.
Yes.
There will be a small, like, let's say that my theory is correct, the people that are tired of the internet, let's just say it's 30%.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
That's a big number.
But it's not the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Let's say everyone else has zombies on the internet, okay?
Yeah.
So the 30% that agree with me, I think of that 30%, maybe, let's say that was 30% would be like, what, 100 million people? That's a lot.
Yeah.
Let's say 100 million, out of 100 million people, I think like 10 million people would be like to the extreme you're talking about. Like, we're going to go off grid, solar power, completely removed from society, like kind of that direction.
Yes.
For the vast majority of this group, I think they're just going to say, I'm living my normal life the way that I'm living it. The only difference is I'm going to completely remove myself from screens outside of my work time, and I'm not going to go on social media anymore. I think that is just like, I think that's the vast majority of this circle, what they're going to think.
Yeah.
And it's going to always be a continual, like, hardship because you're trying to still do work and be productive. Let's be honest, it's very hard to be productive in today's world on a mass level.
Yeah.
Following this idea. So I think it's going to be like, some people use it while at work, some people don't, but nobody in that group is going to use the internet at home anymore.
So, well, to add fuel to your theory, and I'll double back on that too. I think it'll still be like you have to make a living, right, in some kind of way, shape, or form. And how many of that group will want to make a living doing something off the internet? Or even have that ability to. So
right.
That'll be small.
Less than half, for sure.
Yeah, more. Yeah.
You're still going to need the internet to survive during your workday.
Also, the other part that would add fuel to what you're saying is that how far are we from Elon's Neuralink getting to a place where we're literally jacked in all the time? It's not a device anymore. We're literally getting a signal right to our brain that's showing up on our iris of our eye and displaying whatever we want it to display, or we're constantly getting fed information to our brain from the collective. I think
sounds like it's already here. It's just not accepted yet.
It's not yet. But let's say that starts getting adopted commercially and people start jacking into that. I think that'll accelerate the movement away from the internet and away from being connected all the time, because I think you'll see people go absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I think people already are on a small scale, to your point, with just the idea of like scrolling and how bad that is for your brain, how it gives you a headache, and how you almost like people are reporting all over the place how awful it is for them. But it's a true addiction because they can't figure out how to stop.
Yeah.
So there's already a massive amount of pain building up on a society-wide level. Some people are like, oh no, because they're using it for their business. And so like that's keeping them more addicted than anything. It's kind of like any addiction. Let's just use alcohol because it's a widely accepted societal thing. Like in society, it's widely accepted and pushed and promoted.
Yeah.
You can't say the same about most drugs, right?
Right.
So if you take alcohol, if you're trying to quit alcohol, it's very difficult if like part of your job is going to dinners and whining and dining potential prospects and going to big events and all this stuff. It's very easy to convince yourself, well, I just won't drink at home, but I could do it everywhere else, right? People talk about that all the time. That's a very difficult part. Or like cutting out sugar.
Yes.
Very difficult to cut out sugar because it's everywhere.
Yes.
It's not like you can just buy cocaine at every grocery store.
Exactly.
So at least that you got that going for you if you're addicted to cocaine or some crazy thing, right? But when you're talking about that stuff, the internet is going to get to a point where people are just so disillusioned as to what it, like, I'm living in a bubble. I'm living more in virtual reality than actual physical reality.
Yes. And
people will revolt that. Neuralink is going to just, like, to your point, accelerate that by tenfold.
Yeah.
It's scary no matter, even to like technologists that are like all about the future of technology.
Yeah.
That shit's scary.
It is. I've thought about this for a while, looking at cycles of the last, I don't know, we'll call it last 100 years, and which addictions in particular are stacking up. So like you had the 50s was just, that's when Alcoholics Anonymous was started. it was at a boom of, alcohol addiction coming off the Second World War, and just readily accepted that everybody was, drinking all the time. Like
Yep.
you had cocktails at work. Like it was so commonplace. Then, push 20, 30 years later, then Narcotics Anonymous starts because cocaine,
Yep.
heroin just flood the streets of the United States.
You're talking like late 70s, 80s,
Yes.
60s, 70s, 80s, basically.
Yeah, really, really like 70s into early 80s is when like both heroin and cocaine are peaking,
Yeah.
on a mass.
It's cartels from Mexico and all Colombia and everything coming in.
Yeah, our addictions are getting out of control on the drug side. So Narcotics Anonymous starts then. Then you push forward, I don't know, maybe another 10 years to like the 90s, and we move into Overeaters Anonymous. Literally has started. So then we're having serious problems where a good chunk of our population has a serious issue with food, whether they're overeating or they're binging and purging, and they're bulimic, they're throwing up their food. As guys, it's not as common, but amongst the female population, it is rampant.
Yeah.
Like rampant. They're seeing images of models and stuff, and then they're binging, purging. Okay.
Weight loss movement is out of control.
Out of control.
Yeah, freaking Bowflex in the 90s commercials, all that,
Yeah.
all those guys, yeah.
Chuck Norris. Then now my theory is that we're moving into the virtual reality addiction, that we're moving into a subset where, I'm sure there's a 12-step program for, cell phone addiction. I just don't know what it is. I've just never seen it.
There should be. We should start it, if not.
Yeah, agreed. But let's say that's already in existence, or people are starting to really back away from phone addictions because they know how serious it is. I think the virtual reality is the last addiction that we will lose. An entire subset of the population will just go completely virtual, and that they'll live their entire life there. They're gone. They're going to be constantly jacked in, whether it's a VR headset or it's the Neuralink or whatever. We're going to lose a big chunk of society that's just going to stop procreating. They're not going to engage with society anymore. That's like our next big one.
It's not even hard to believe that that's not even that large of a leap, because if you see, I don't know what the percentage is of gamers that are like real gamers all the time.
Yes.
Whatever that, it's a small percentage of the U.S. population, let's say.
Maybe not of the youth though.
It's still thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that pretty much don't leave their apartment if they don't have to.
Yes.
And it's antisocial, sit in your apartment, game till 4 a.m. every single day, every single night, every single morning.
Yep.
It's like so crazy, and you become zombies. We've seen what that does to even like these school, shootings and all kinds of crazy shit.
Yes.
Where it's like mental health is very much in decline because of stuff like that.
Yes.
We're not that, and it's hard to say as a gamer, oh, this is really productive for my life, right?
Yeah.
You can't really make that case.
Pretty hard to say.
I don't really think people even try to make that case.
No.
They're just like, that's what I like to do. That's what I do.
Blowing off steam. Yep.
But think about, to your point, virtual reality. Think of how easy it's going to be to say, well, I do this because I'm making money with it.
Yep.
I mean, I see it with social media.
Yep.
You know how many people that are doing social media right now on a mass level that I've talked to that are like, I mean, if I didn't have to do this, if I didn't make any money doing this and it wasn't like a career and I didn't I meet a lot of cool people through this and stuff, that would just be like, screw it. I just go off grid.
Yeah.
A lot.
It's got to be a lot at this point.
So what's going to happen when they're just, you're plugged into this virtual reality and you're walking through life, you're doing things in this video game that's actually real life, but in a virtual setting.
Yeah.
Like you're actually using real money. You're trading services and goods and buying shit, and you're consulting people, whatever you're doing, if you're just doing it at a mass level because it's all virtual. People will convince themselves that is what real life is about, and that our families are kind of on the side.
Yeah.
Like when I go home at the end of the day, man, I guess I got to eat physically still to stay alive. So I'll do that with my family, but then I'll plug right back in.
Yes.
It's going to get crazy.
It's going to get crazy. And that is not even to mention the whole category of porn. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
What's going to happen then to our birth rate when men and women are just jacked into that?
Well, 9 in 10 male adults in the USA
Yes.
are addicted to that.
What's going to happen to
9 out of 10, dude.
what's going to happen to sex addiction then?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be off the charts. Well, you just think about, I mean, even people marrying robots. Everyone's like, oh, that's never going to happen.
You left
Dude, are
now.
you joking?
You left now.
Have you seen AI, the way that it can talk to you?
Yes.
Have you seen the way? So you'll have this entire population of young men, especially, that are just like, well, I can just design the perfect woman that looks like a woman. Everything about it is like a woman, talks like a woman, except for I can just design it to say whatever I want it to tell me.
Yep. And I can
You
boss
think
it around.
that's going to end well?
No.
No.
That is the moment the robots start looking good looking, whether it be a guy or a girl, if they start getting good looking robots, we're in trouble. Like the birth rate's toast.
Well, and just in general, like back to our point, even without AI, even without robots, just think of what that is doing to the hearts and minds and mental health of an entire generation. Like that's a real problem.
Yeah.
Just the entire industry in and of itself. It is attacking people these days. Whereas, like, let's be honest, our grandparents, they had to deal with, these are human things that have been happening for a long time. People have had to deal with lust their entire, generations and generations and generations.
Yes.
The difference is you kind of had to go find it
Right.
back in the day.
Right.
Now it attacks you.
All day.
It attacks these young men at age, well, I don't even know how young.
When do you get on a device?
10 maybe now? 12? Like, it's literally insane. I'm sure there's cases way lower or whatever, but it's like,
yeah.
by the time you're in high school, it's already game over. If parents think that this isn't happening, they need to wake up, because 90% of your children are addicted to this. 90% of adults are addicted to this.
Yep.
It's a real problem that society should start talking about openly.
What's the spiritual solution? Because there's not like let's say they're already trying to ban access to porn sites where you have to, put your ID in or whatever. You have to upload your ID, and that keeps some people off, whether you're underage or whatever, from looking at the content. That's one solution. Like Florida, Idaho, Utah, like they've signed on to this, but it doesn't stop the mass, majority of porn sites out there. They just, a new one pops up every day. Like
Well, I'd love to say just make it illegal, but when you make it illegal, it's not like it entirely solves the problem. I think it's a good step, but like, even so, to your point, even if it were illegal, like no ID, no anything, you just literally can't access it legally. You can't block that. I mean, there's a certain amount of people that are still going to find it
easily.
Like that's not.
Yeah, making it
would help though.
You would think. But, we've said the same thing about drugs. We've said the same thing about, prostitution. And what ends up happening is that it just turns it into a black market, and the black market just makes it more lucrative and less regulated.
Is there more prostitution in Nevada?
Yeah, there's a lot of prostitution in Nevada.
Compared to, like, let's say Idaho or
yeah,
Washington or whatever.
Nevada seemingly is like, per capita the most,
So I think that does show some semblance of, even though it doesn't entirely eradicate the problem, it does help it to make it illegal.
Well, it's tough to say because it's the only place where it's legal, and also it is Sin City's there. So people are literally going there just to use it.
That's true.
So like Amsterdam, it's legal there. And I don't think it's more prolific in Amsterdam before it was legal or after. But I also I'm not a proponent of like legalizing everything either. Like I've seen the studies where they legalize, heroin and hard drugs in places like Spain and Switzerland and a couple European countries, where it's not criminalized or whatever. But I don't think that's the answer either.
Well, I don't, because I mean, just on even if you take away the result of does it actually affect change or not, let's just take that aside for a second. Let's just say it doesn't.
Yeah.
Whether you legalize it or not. I think that government is in place, like it is the moral authority that we have given it the moral authority to regulate certain things.
Yeah.
And it is the actual metric of health of a society is what your government is saying, yes, this is, or no, this isn't. And I don't know, a lot of people are like, oh, keep faith and morals completely separate from politics, but you just literally can't. You go back to Greek, you go back to the Romans, you go back to all this, when a society from a government level starts to decay on their morals and removes that from the decision-making process, the actual society itself, like the economics of it, deteriorate just as fast.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think there also is a case to be made that regardless of the result of saying the porn industry is illegal, it's outlawed because it's bad for human beings, bad for their health.
Yeah.
Now people go, oh, you can't regulate that. Well, I don't know. Do we think that that's morally good or morally not good for humans? And if it is not good, shouldn't the government have a say in that?
The government, should carry out the will of the people in order to preserve the society. I think that.
What if the will of the people is to be cocaine addicts?
Then that's what's going to happen. Because there's no way the will of the people is going to be overruled by the government because some people think it's a good idea. The government is the people, but
ideally,
yeah.
Like in a true republic.
Yeah. And as even take for instance, if there are financial interests that are, going to make money from, us actually banning some of this stuff, then it has a better chance of being banned. But it's usually the opposite way around.
Yeah.
Usually, actually selling the good and service generally makes more profitable sense for financial interests. But counter that back, the reason why I asked what was the spiritual solution to this is I think whether or not government gets involved, it's going to have to happen at some way, shape, or form, around policy. But it's not very clear cut, or else we would have figured that out by now. We're going to test out a little turbulence to see how this goes.
If you see a little bump, that's because it's a little turbulent for some reason. It shouldn't be. So 40,000 feet.
40,000 feet, it should be fine. But,
Hey, look at that hurricane up there. Tornado.
No big deal. It'll be fine. Let's say we get to a spot where we don't really have a good solution on the policy side. Let's say we don't have anything that can really make a difference. Spiritually and morally, what do we start incorporating into society, or what do we, better yet, reincorporate into society that actually can turn the tide and help people, get away from addiction of screens, porn, get back to some kind of like traditional values, something that will actually propel our society into the future, where we have more generations and we don't lose out on our future, essentially. What are the spiritual, solutions?
I think I think Josh a couple years ago would try to answer this from some kind of like human standpoint. That's like, here's why it's best for humans to act this way. But there is no solution to these types of problems that doesn't involve the word Jesus. Just gonna say like it is. I don't think there's any way to solve this human problem with human logic. I think it has to be a relationship with a higher being.
Yes.
I believe that's God. I believe that's Jesus Christ himself.
Me too.
And without that, it's an impossible task. How can you convince somebody to seemingly defy human pleasure?
Yep.
In any format? I know we're talking about, obviously in the sexual format, but like just any format.
Yeah.
How can you convince a human to stop seeking power for its own sake? How can you keep someone from sleeping with their girlfriend before they marry them.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense, dude.
You're right.
How do you how do you even like, you can't even joke about it because it's so absurd to the average person to even say that out loud. I'll get crucified if this goes in a clip. But it's like, how do you talk about any of those things trying to convince myself as a human or any other human to not do certain things or to do certain things that defy your desires without saying it's because God has a bigger plan for it? It's because God has a rule book that when you follow that rule book, when you follow that guideline, it actually benefits you as a human in the end more than anything that you could have done on your own.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a solution. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think secular solutions, that we've tried on the government side, but also that even scientific studies are trying to figure out at this point. I mean, it's pretty clear from studies that show that if you take the traditional approach to getting married, then having a kid, that or like getting educated, then getting married, then having kids in wedlock. One, your kids are far more likely to succeed. Also, if there's a man and a woman in the relationship that are in it for the long term, and bound and stay married throughout that whole process, the kids are like massively more likely to, one, get educated themselves, two, be successful in life, stable emotional, less likely to have any kind of mental disorders or diagnoses. So studies are lining up with religion and showing that if you follow the path of God, just by happenstance, even if you just happen to do it in that order,
right,
you are far more likely to be successful, and your kids are far more likely to be successful as if you don't. So those studies are there, but like, how is the secular population going to start adopting that, knowing that my best chance of success myself, even in my own career, let alone my kids, is if I follow the traditional path that was laid out in religion? I don't know how you kind of translate that without getting them involved in religion, because that's the easiest way to do it, is like, just start going to church,
I have a big opinion on this.
Go ahead.
This is why the personal development community has attempted to do, is to take morals and principles and growing to be the best version of you, to work on human skills, to work on all these things, not necessarily removed from God, but what I'm saying is, like, whether you believe in God or whether you don't believe in God doesn't matter. You can still practice personal development type stuff.
Yes.
Get better as a human. And it will, like what you're saying, all those things, whether you believe in God or whether you don't believe in God, if you take these series of actions, which happens to be in line with God's will, but if you take these series of actions, even if you don't give credit to God, you're going to have a certain level of human success. I think we both agree on that.
Yes.
I, for years, have thought that is the best way to bring an entire society or a subpopulation of society to God, is through personal development first. But I think that's completely false. This is a recent revelation.
Well, how so? How is it false?
Because God is the entire point. So even me living this happy little life, let's say, in this scenario. Thanks for the jelly beans. These are fire, by the way.
Our podcast sponsored by sour jelly beans from Trader Joe's, product of Ireland. Shout out Ireland.
Yeah.
Best sour jelly beans on the planet.
I don't even like jelly beans, but I like sour jelly beans.
Yeah, these are good. I don't like regular jelly beans either.
Rob offered them to me like 7 times, and I said no, like a week straight, and then I finally said yes, and I love them now. But literally, God is the entire point. So, like, even if you are being a good human and you're learning and you're growing and you're doing well in business and you're doing well in your marriage and you're doing all the things right.
Yeah.
You will always have a hole inside of you that you can't, like some kind of a void inside of you that you can't fill.
A God-shaped hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the problem with the personal development movement is that it points everything back to you. Like, this is all for me and my family.
Yeah.
That's a farce. That's a myth. Is like everything, I'm doing this for me and I'm doing this for my family. That's a slight perversion of the good, which is it should be pointing back to God. I'm doing this to honor and glorify God, my creator, to have a relationship closer to him. Personal development thinks that growth just by itself is the goal. And I'll be honest, I used to believe it 100%.
Yeah.
And I got sidetracked. While personal development has brought me closer to God in some ways, it has also attempted to bring me away from God in other ways as well. And recently I've realized that you just present Jesus. You just present God. And you fall in love with God,
Yep.
and you follow his step. And that way you don't have that God-sized hole in your heart.
Yep.
You fill that, and yeah, you'll still get all those human things along the way when you ask for it and you follow. And it's not like this is a completely cohesive thought because it's a new one for me. It's not like I have some PhD level, information on this, but from my own life, I can speak to that.
I don't think you're wrong at all. I don't disagree a bit. What I'd say is that on the whole, so we're a mostly Christian country. The West is mostly a Christian culture. So Jesus makes sense. You put Jesus up in the West, but then you have the East, who's got Buddha and Krishna, two huge population sets that have, over 1 billion population apiece that are, they're in some form of, either Buddhism or Hinduism, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So on the whole, and this is what I think, this is one of the reasons why I agree with you, is that the 12-step programs, AA, NA, Cocaine Anonymous, all of them, you think like the main goal being remove the substance. You think the point of stopping drinking is to stop drinking. You go to AA to stop drinking. But when you get inside of these programs, you read their literature, and the whole point of them is to lead you toward a spiritual experience. They think that is the only way you're going to overcome something like an addiction, is with a power greater than yourself.
Yeah,
But
they're saying
they
you
don't name
can't do that in and of yourself.
Yeah, but like they don't name Jesus.
Right.
But, so somebody who's a Buddhist could still get sober. They don't name it Jesus, but somebody who is a Muslim could still get sober, if they were struggling with drinking, which is a lot less in that culture because it's a non-drinking religion. But let's say, if the goal of those 12-step programs kind of coincided with the personal development movement, meaning like, what if within a personal development movement, there was a very large emphasis that the point of all this is to bring you towards a power greater than yourself, is to bring you towards spiritual experiences. And, growth alone won't sustain you. You will need that connection with a higher power, or else you will lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just like your growth will literally become the thing that destroys you, because it's not just failure that causes you to hit rock bottom. Sometimes it's success, and you become something you don't want to become, and you turn into that monster, right? You get then the pride and the greed and the anger when things don't go your way. If you don't have a higher power to rely on, you're screwed. You're going to rely on just your own thoughts, just your own feelings, just your own, I made $1 billion.
Yeah, like where does that lead?
The answer.
So like where does that lead?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have $1 billion. Well, you don't have 10.
Yeah.
You don't have 100. You're not the number one guy.
Yeah.
So the more I study my faith, the more I question what the hell are we even doing? Like, there is good in growth. I'm not saying don't grow, like financially, let's say, or whatever.
Yeah.
But also, like, really pay attention to the influencers you're following. Because, like...
Yeah, what are the fruits of their labor?
So it sounds really sexy on a podcast to say, well, if you're not going to the absolute top, if you're not the Michael Jordan of your niche, then what the F are you doing with your life?
Yes.
That's a really sexy thing to hear on a podcast and fire you up, and like the competitor inside you as a man is like, let's go take on the world.
Yes.
Is that the point though? Is that the answer?
No, it's not. But I also think they play a role.
I do too.
You know, in meaning that, like, if you're in the spot of you are just in pure apathy, like your life is in shambles.
Yeah.
You can't get out of bed. You're not going to work. You're not contributing to society. You're too afraid to live and you're too afraid to die. You're too chicken shit to kill yourself, but you're also like too afraid to go out and do anything because you're just at this apathetic and apoplectic state.
Yeah.
Somebody that can like just jolt you out of it and be like, hey, get your shit together.
Yeah.
Get it together. Like, go take that next action, take that whatever, just to get somebody moving. I think those people are valuable. And that message is valuable to the person that's stuck in that place. But are they the best messengers overall if they don't have, you know, a higher power centric message? I think they're missing out.
Well, yeah, believe me, I think if we're going to err on one side of the winner to loser spectrum, I would rather we err on the side of being winners and a little prideful than being losers and contributing nothing to society. But sometimes I do struggle as a winner, as somebody that has achieved, you know, I mean, we're sitting literally on a jet. So
yes.
It's like, I've achieved something.
I think you've won at a few things.
Yeah, but like, you gotta battle against the upper side of that, which is like, you gotta be really careful what your motivation is for growth. You can convince yourself of anything. And
very true.
Are you doing this? Like, let's say you're making $100,000 a year right now.
Yep.
And you're more than paying your bills or whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to convince yourself that you can work 90-hour work weeks still, even though you've made it in a sense at 100,000 or let's say 200,000, whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to work 90-hour work weeks and say, I'm doing this for my family.
Sure.
Okay, are you? Let's just call it like it is. Are you actually doing that for your family? There's a lot of ways to spin that. I don't have all the answers. I would venture to guess 9 times out of 10 that I talk to people convince ourselves that we're doing it for our family.
Yep.
But you're actually doing it for you. You're doing it for the thrill. You're doing it for what I can achieve. And that doesn't make it bad. It just means don't kid yourself.
Yeah.
Is there a way to grow and still prioritize the things in life that actually matter? And then a bunch of the winners are going to be like, well, that's a loser thing to say, Josh. You're saying success doesn't actually matter. I don't know. To what degree does it? Put one of your kids in the hospital with a terminal illness. Now tell me what matters.
Oh, yeah.
Put your wife or put your husband, whatever, in a terminal cancer situation in a hospital with 3 months to live. Tell me what you think is most important in life at that point. And if you still don't have to really soul search for the answer to that, I think you're literally been gaslighted and you're hallucinating and you've just been hypnotized to believe this narrative that growth in success, power, money, fame, notoriety, legacy. You know who doesn't talk about legacy very much?
Who?
The apostles.
True.
Like, you know, it cracks me up. Like, the more I read the Bible, the more I study my faith, the less I care about legacy. Isn't that inherently prideful?
It is. And I'll agree with you on that. And it's not even just some of the, you know, quote unquote, most spiritually grounded people I've ever come across in my life. When you bring up legacy, and say, you know, I want to leave something, you know, I want to impact the earth in such a way that, you know, I'm leaving something behind, you know, that is my legacy or whatever. every single one of them, and different faith backgrounds. One's Native American, doesn't even like, they were essentially like, yeah, that's legacy's bullshit. When you're, like that has nothing to do with what you should be like focusing on in this life. Now,
that's a hard jelly bean to swallow.
That's a super hard, even sour jelly bean to swallow. But thank you, Christian. There was your second one for the podcast.
I'll give you a couple more because they're cool.
Yeah, all right. So what are we giving them? 2 more?
One apiece.
Okay. Well, it brings up an interesting thought exercise. I was doing this with my wife yesterday. Say you put, let's pick a number. Let's pick $1 million. You put $1 million in a bank account. Do you want to buy a house? You want to go on a vacation? Do you want to go to a med spa and get your health right and, change your entire, chemistry of your body? What do you want to do with that $1 million? What we started talking about was I would want to get my health right. I would want my body to be in the best shape it possibly can with that $1 million. And I'd rather rent a house for a whole nother year and go spend 50 grand to go to Switzerland to a med spa and have them do a full workup and, work on anything I'm struggling with, like long-term health wise.
I don't disagree with you. Like, I think that's a good answer. My immediate answer, and I don't even know if this is the right answer, so no one follow this. Just contemplate it. If that were me, I would think, how do I get my time back to pursue, like to have the ability, like the peace of mind to pursue things that I want to pursue without the financial burden hanging over me? Because if you go buy the house, well, now you have the house and you have a bunch of expense. Let's say you pay $1 million for $1 million house. Yep. Nice house, dude. Yep. Congrats. Love that. I have a nice house. I actually have 2 of them. Mm-hmm. Well, technically 3, but anyway.
Yeah, and they're nice.
And they're nice. Yeah. So I'm not going to be the person that says, don't go do that. Dude, it's awesome.
And it provides a great spot for the kids to have a home. To
chickens,
flourish.
And goats, and ducks, and bunnies, and, they're out there doing the thing, and there's a pool, and it's a great environment. So I'm not going to sit here and say that doesn't help your life. I think it does.
Yeah.
But if you have $1 million in your bank, you go pay $1 million for a house, you still have all these expenses, and you still have to go keep making money somehow to support all that, which that's inherently not bad either.
Right.
But I think, to your point, like, how do you pursue health? Yep. You're going to have peace of mind enough to reduce the chaos of your life enough that you say, I can afford the time to go do this.
Yeah.
Not only just the money, but the time.
Yes.
I want a, relationship with my creator. I think if we're being honest with ourselves, you go far enough down this rabbit hole and there's nothing more important than that.
I don't disagree.
Because either you die and go in the dirt and none of this matters.
Right.
That's depressing.
Yes.
Or you choose to believe and it matters more than anything else on the planet.
Yeah.
It's just we're too dumb to think of that daily.
Yeah.
Then, like, to pursue that relationship with your creator, you still need the peace of mind to be like, okay, I'm not worrying about all these other things. So that's my general take on that, is like, I think in order of rank, it's like, how do I have enough peace of mind to focus on my spiritual relationship with my creator?
Yep.
Whatever that is for you, but I used to say that. Honestly, I'm just going to say, well, if it's not Jesus, then we disagree. So go figure that out.
Right.
Let's debate that. That'd be fun. So have that relationship.
Yeah.
Pursue health next, which I'm inherently bad at. I would agree with you on that. And then from there, I don't know what it is.
Well, I would think that, like, you can pursue your relationship with your higher power no matter how busy you are. It just has to be a very strong intention. Like you hit your knees in the morning when you get out of bed. You definitely hit your knees at night before you go to bed, and you're praying throughout the day. You're creating that constant relationship and that dialogue internally that's with your higher power. But I think it's interesting that if at least for me, I'm ordering, like, okay, what is the order of operations for things that I deem as most important, I think health has to be at number one, not above your higher power. That has to.
Yeah. You're saying that's a prerequisite to anything.
Prerequisite, like you got
whether you're rich, poor, chaotic, peaceful, doesn't matter. I agree with that.
Just for me, it has to, like.
No, I agree with that.
But also on the other side of that, it's then what are my Maslow's hierarchy from there? I think health has to be health in your relationships. You know, your significant other, your community, your relationship with, you know, the broader world. If your relationships aren't good and your health isn't good, if either one of those goes first, like your life will spiral out of control, or it becomes the only thing you think of at that point. It's like, we don't know how important it is until we lose it. But the moment you lose a crucial relationship in your family, or you lose your health, there's a reason why, like, all you can focus on after that is just those things. Or, you know, your whole focus goes around, like, you can't just like shove it aside. It's because they are very, very important to being a human being. To this experience on Earth, anyways, in my opinion.
I experienced this, like, when I was an 8th grader. I was an 8th grader when my grandparents passed away 2 months apart from each other. And we lived a half a mile down the road from them. They lived on the farm that I went to every single day with my dad.
Yeah.
And best friends. Like, you, at the time, if you would ask, like, who are your best friends? Like, probably, no offense, mom and dad, but like, I would thought mom and dad are my mom and dad. Yes. And you say, well, who are my best friends? Grandma and grandpa. Yeah. Like, they were.
I don't think they'd be mad at that. I think they'd be. That's part of the deal.
You know, I spent so much time with them. And like, my brother was older than me, so they'd all be, you know, working. And I was a little bit younger. I was working, but then like when I would get tired of it, instead of like being a pest, I'd just go sit inside with grandma. Well, she had cancer for 7 years. So she was kind of sitting in her chair most of the day at that point. And she's just praying all the time. And she was a wonderful woman. For a really active woman, I think that was her purgatory. Like, that's her living hell, is to be able to have to just sit in a chair all day. Yeah. And not be able to go out and do the garden and all that. Yeah. Anyway, so I'd sit there and we'd just talk and I'd eat candy. And that was my version of like being on the farm, right? Yep. So I remember when they passed away, within 2 months of each other, kind of freakishly, it was a very traumatic thing. I was an 8th grader, and I remember thinking, nothing else at that point matters more than where you go next. Yeah. The next thing that matters is like...
Wait, hold on. Unpack that. Where you go next with what?
Like, when you die, where do you go after that? You know what I'm saying? Like... Yes. Fast forward to quite like another 10 or 15 years from that moment, and my father-in-law was passing away of cancer, you know, and, you know, this was only a couple of years ago. Yeah. And we were there for 6 months taking care of him, and I remember he's laying on a bed at his house. He's at the very end. Yeah. You don't know if it's going to be an hour or a day or 2 days, but he can't communicate, and he's just staring at the ceiling with his mouth open, just breathing very uncomfortably. Yeah. It's not a very pleasant sight. Actually, the first time I've ever seen that. I just not been around death a lot. Yeah. I remember just sitting there for like an hour watching this dude that I know staring at the ceiling with his mouth open, can't communicate. I'm just like, what the hell is this guy thinking about? Yeah. At that moment, what matters to you? What are you thinking about? Are you thinking back on your life? Or are you just like, my
Did you ask him?
Yeah, but he couldn't communicate.
I got to talk to my grandpa about it. I want you to finish that story, though.
I'm curious on this. My theory, if I were in those shoes, if I was laying on that bed, wouldn't you be either scared of what's next because you don't know or don't believe and don't have any sense of what it's going to be like? Yeah. I'd be pretty freaking scared. It's either am I just going to die and go in the dirt and that's it? What is that even like? Like, if you really think about that. Yes. Then this is it. Yeah. I got nothing left. Are you thinking, if you are a believer and you do have faith, I'm scared, but Lord, take me? You got to have a little bit of an inkling of like, oh man, like, I know this roller coaster. Like, I know this roller coaster. I was literally at Disney World and I saw the roller coaster 100 times before I got on it. Yeah. I know it's not going to crash. I know it's not going to go off the rails. But then when you're at the top of the roller coaster and you're about to go down and it clicks, do you have just a little bit of a like, oh shit, what's going to happen next? Yeah. I've always wondered that for people that are super faithful.
Yes.
Do you still have that, like, or does God like just overwhelm you with his presence at that moment? I don't know all the answers. Those are my theories. Is nothing else matters more to you in that moment than what's about to happen to me next? And did I live a life that I'm proud of? I don't think you're thinking about your bank account balances. I don't think you're thinking about how much money you're leaving to your kids. I think you're thinking about, oh man, I hope I'm going to a better place, not a worse place.
Yeah. I've had the opportunity to talk to multiple men on their way out. You know, they knew it was coming. They were on their way. And there was fear that, like, did I actually thread the needle? Did I, live a life that I'm going to heaven? Both were Catholic. And, the next place was on their mind.
Yeah.
Being like, did I do it? One was my grandpa, who was an ordained deacon in Catholic Church.
I didn't know that.
Spent his life serving, others. And even he, I asked him if he was afraid a little bit, and he said, yeah, I'm afraid. You don't really know, and same thing with a mentor of mine, Jack. He knew it was coming too. He was in the hospital with COVID, and he had called me to say, like, goodbye. He said, it's not looking good. But I want you to know I love you, and that, I'm a little bit scared, but it's going to be okay, I think. But when I asked my grandpa, I had like a whole day with him. Actually a couple days, but I got to pull him aside with nobody else around, and he was on a breathing machine. So it was kind of labored talking, but he was able to sit up and talk with me. And he said, I asked him, I said, first thing I asked is, do you have any regrets in life? And one of his answers to me was, yes, I regretted not taking an opportunity, and I regretted not taking a risk. And it was around a job, which you would think, like, doesn't mean that all that much. Like, at the end of your life, you're like, why are you worried? Why were you even thinking about this job? But when you're thinking over your lifetime, the way I processed it was taking risk in life and just going for it every once in a while. At the end, you will be thinking about the things you didn't risk, the things you didn't jump for, things that you were just like, no, I'm just not going to do it. That's one of the messages I got from my grandpa around that, was like, if those opportunities come up, don't just shrug it off like that's a big risk, it doesn't make sense or whatever. You should really consider taking some of those risks. I've been pretty good about that throughout my life in certain aspects, and I've fallen short in others. But I think on the big risks, and I got to credit my wife with this too, because she really supports me whenever these big risks come up, that we really sit and process it and look at it and go, in the long run, will we regret not making this decision in the affirmative? And generally speaking, if we can answer that yes, and we're going to look back on it and regret it, we do it.
That's a good. Yeah, I can second the motion. My wife, actually, she should probably say no to more. Like,
yeah,
we probably
both of us. Yeah,
we could probably take a little less risk, to be honest. But no, I love that perspective, because it just puts the rest of it in perspective. Like, you're probably going to be okay. Like, if somebody's listening to this and they are trying to like go start a new business or whatever, let's just say you do fail.
Yeah.
I failed at, I can officially say that I believe that I failed at more projects than I've won at. And unfortunately,
legit.
Unfortunately for me, probably 2 years ago, I couldn't say the same.
Right.
I was like, I kind of had the Wonder Kid effect for a minute there.
Yep.
Where it's like, everything you touch turns to gold. I have now tried enough things that I think that I understand what it feels like to fail at a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
And to know what that really feels like. And that doesn't go away no matter how successful you get, it doesn't matter. But I think it just means, like, it's worth doing because otherwise you'd always question, what could have I done if I would have tried?
Yeah.
You know, like what could have I built?
Analysis paralysis is brutal. I don't think we're alone. I think you and I would say, you know, not to speak for you, but like Gen Z in particular, as they're coming up right now, they've got so many opportunities. They've got AI at their fingertips. They've got every possible conceivable technological advancement that we didn't have even when we were kids. And, you know, them to actually take a risk or to actually choose something to go into, they're struggling. Now, we all struggle with that today too. I'm not saying like we're not exempt from it, but we lived in a world where we didn't have technically everything at our fingertips for, you know, most of, you know, a good chunk of our childhoods. And we were, you know, you get kind of trained in that sense to take a risk every once in a while and just go for it, because what is the worst that happens?
Yeah.
Okay. You fail. Yeah, it sucks. It hurts your pride. It hurts your ego. Maybe it hurts your bank account. But those are recoverable things.
Yeah, 100%. So like, I guess bring this whole thing like full circle. You know, we've talked about technology, AI, screens, too much of it, people revolting against that.
Yeah.
Talking about mental health, addictions, all these things. Gen Z specifically, you brought up recently. I guess like in that world, wondering like, how do you raise young kids? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I didn't have, you know, iPhone and iPad and stuff when I was a kid. Now I did play a lot of PlayStation 2.
Legit. Maybe
So, like,
Super Nintendo for me.
So like I'm honestly more radical than my own parents about screen time. Because like my parents would, even though I was on the farm a lot, I would play a lot of video games early in the morning when I get up like at 4 a.m. to play video games, or late at night or whatever I would.
Yes.
So like, I had that and it didn't like ruin me. But then again, it's not like I have a perfect, like I have plenty of mental anxiety around screens and stuff these days. So like I am more radical in raising my kids than my parents were, because I see the need and I see the detrimental effects more than that generation would have, because it wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
And so like, is that founded or is that not? You know how radical I am.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, I've seen it.
Pretty much no screen time for kids except for a family movie.
Yeah.
Maybe commercial flights, we've done like a phone, but even then there's like no headphones.
Yeah.
We just literally a phone and I have to like watch it with no audio. Because I'm like, I have 4 kids and it's effing insane.
Yeah.
But where do you think the line is on that? Like, how do you still participate and teach the kids how the world works without being of the world? I guess that's something that I am currently trying to figure out.
Yeah. I don't think you're alone. I'm in the same boat. And here's the way I kind of process that a little bit. When I was a kid, we too had TV, and we had Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64.
How about like N64? That was later.
James Bond. Oh my God. GoldenEye. Incredible game. I was a beast with Boris and Oddjob. Anyway, so I would say this, that like, even though we had those things and we loved to play them, I was still athletically inclined. I loved going out, playing basketball, running.
Were you like playing at your house, like outside? Do you have like an outdoor hoop or something?
I had a hoop. I had a hoop in the driveway, and I would go till 10 o'clock at night. My mom would have to call me in. You know, same thing. My mom and my dad would have to call me in late at night because I'd be out there shooting all night. I just loved being athletic, and like having fun. And we would set up like during the US Open, for tennis, we would set up a volleyball net across our street on our cul-de-sac, cause like nobody would drive down it. And we spray paint,
awesome.
lines on the ground, and we'd actually play tennis in the middle of the street. We weren't like good tennis players or whatever, but like
just fun.
Yeah. Baseball, football, running bases, you just name it. We played it, and we were always outside, but we would go in and play, you know, Nintendo every once in a while because we wanted to just veg out every once in a while. We didn't want to go out and run around.
which I think is fine.
I think it's totally fine. Now, I think that balance still exists today if you have kids that are athletically inclined. Because I noticed I have 2 daughters, both of them, if given the option to watch TV or go to gymnastics, or watch TV and go to dance, or watch TV and go to the park, they're picking the park, gymnastics, and dance every day.
But if it's between doing nothing and watching TV, of course you're going to watch TV.
They're going to watch TV.
And the more addicted they become, at least in my experience, I don't know if it's the same for you.
Yeah.
But I couldn't say the same at a certain point when we just had Jameson, our oldest.
Yeah.
There was a certain point where he wanted to do nothing but TV because we allowed it too much to where it actually, like, second he woke up, he wanted to watch it. So, and that could be just personality too. But like now that it's more removed, he's the same as what you're saying.
Yes.
But like when there's an overcorrection that happens, like when it becomes like the main thing and everything else is the side thing.
Yeah.
That's when I've seen the opposite.
I think the most balanced approach to it is it's not a clear cut, like you just cut it and say no. I think you have to put different guardrails for different kids. So take Jameson, for instance, like you had to overcorrect because it was too much.
Yep.
My girls, it was the same thing. They wanted to get on TV all the time.
Yeah.
But when you gave them the option to do all these other things outdoors, then all of a sudden it was like, it was just naturally more balanced because they feel better when they're running around. They're having way more fun. They're interacting with the world. They're meeting. My one daughter is super social. So every time she goes to the park, she makes a new friend. You know what I mean? So like, she doesn't get to do that when she's watching, YouTube or something like that,
Right.
So I think that it's our job to put the guardrails on when we see them kind of get imbalanced. But naturally, if you have the athletic, outdoor, anything non-TV related that's stimulating options available, and you push those and you serve those up as like, the way more fun things to do, there's going to be a natural balance there. And then you don't have to be that parent that's like, it's no TV, no nothing. I think that may be the balance.
Everything in me, but I'm not a very balanced person, but everything in me wants to be like, somebody name for me a benefit to the child. Name a benefit to the child of having your kid have any amount of screen time. Let's say less than age 12.
Okay. So
like part of me wants to say that. Like,
learn.
It's not that I do that.
Yeah.
We do family movie night.
Yeah.
We attempt once a week. It usually turns into more like 2.
Yeah.
So like, is there really a benefit outside of like, okay, they're like natively in tune with platforms and stuff, so they can like, that'll serve them in their career later on. Like, I understand that.
Sure.
But like up to age, let's say 10, let's make it easier.
Yeah.
Up to age 10, is there really much benefit?
I think that there is a benefit in two spots. Educationally, I think you can show them places, careers, like educational type content where somebody is doing something experientially. They see gymnastics, or they see skiing on TV. Like they watch the X Games and they're like, I want to try and go ski. I want to go do that.
Like exposure, kind of like almost like reading books is exposure.
It's just another form of books if you're doing it that way. Now, granted, is it better that they're reading? Yes, I think there are better ways to introduce, but books don't have the visual component that YouTube does, and it may inspire something to go experience in the world better than a book. Also,
like there has been movies that have like to this point, there have been movies that have changed my life. There have been moments in movies that have changed my life.
They're art.
It is.
It's art.
But then I have to back up though and say, okay, Josh, as a net positive or net negative, there have been moments when I was drinking a lot at a bar at midnight.
Yeah.
That have been a good thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Good relationships. Sure.
Has alcohol been a net positive or net negative in my life? Well, that's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to say net positive.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just or take any other thing.
Yeah.
Like social media. That's hard for me because we've done quite well on social media.
Yeah.
And we've learned a lot by it. I've got a tremendous amount of contacts in my network that I dearly love
Yep.
because of that.
Yep.
So saying net positive or net negative is very hard for me. But as a child, I don't think I can probably say it was a net positive for me to have those video games. I don't know. I was highly competitive, so like a lot of strategy. I learned a lot of strategy from them.
Yeah. Well,
But like it's hard. So maybe I'm just overthinking it. That's probably the real thing is I'm overthinking it.
well, I think it's perfectly normal to think about this stuff as a parent, or even go back and think about like all the time I wasted as a kid and what I could have become. But I think the answer to that ties back into like, there's this like, what is the end goal? The end goal being like a relationship with your higher power, and I think people get it twisted. God wants you to play. He wants you to have fun. This life shouldn't just only be about achieving. It should be, you should be at play, so if you like to play a game, if you like to play a board game, if you like to play video games, have fun.
Dude, that's hard for me.
It's not easy.
Just being real. Like,
no,
that's hard for me.
I totally get that. I totally
like,
get
I'm going through right
you're serious. Yeah, you're serious.
now. Yeah.
I'm serious too.
Yeah.
Like I'm super serious, and it's hard for me to have fun sometimes because I just want to achieve the next thing and the next thing. I think,
like, are you allowed? Like, you're saying you're allowed to have fun, like, for just fun's sake.
yeah,
As long as it's not like any moral, whatever. But like,
yeah,
it's like going out and having. That's a wild concept to me. Like, logically, I understand that, and I'm like,
Yes.
oh yeah. But like, emotionally, it actually hits hard.
yeah,
It's actually emotional for me.
yeah,
Like the idea that I would say that to myself, like, you're allowed to go have fun.
yeah,
Just because, for no other reason than just to have fun. Like, well, what's the purpose? Like, I can have fun. Like, this is fun for me. I love it. It's
Yeah.
also work.
Yeah.
But like, I love it. Like, what if this has nothing to do with work? What if there was no element to this other than just purely fun? Very difficult for me to get on board.
and I can see why, because as the stakes rise in our lives, where everything can kind of have a dollar value attached to it, like how much does it cost to fly on this jet? How much does it cost to, do X, Y, or Z that we're about to go do? Okay, that was hard-earned money that you sunk time, blood, sweat, and tears into earning that money. And okay, so is the fun worth it? I think that's why as adults we struggle. I think that's why I struggle in particular, is because, and I had this conversation many times over the last 5-10 years, is like, how do I allow myself to actually just have fun? Because I have a tendency to be a little too serious. I have a tendency to not allow myself to just, go play around the golf. Like, since my kids have been born, I played golf 3 times. Now, most people would be like, that's probably a good thing, Rob. But, because you're not wasting 4 hours on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yeah.
But the opposite side to that is I love playing golf. I used to play golf with my grandpa, with my dad, all the time.
Yeah. It's like,
It's fun, So like, why am I being anorexic around having fun? Why am I like, and I think there's something to that whole component that we're kind of missing. So that's where, like,
do you feel like you can't afford to, or do you feel like you don't deserve to?
well,
I'm asking me as much as I'm asking you.
I know. I think that if I'm being honest about it, I think that I feel selfish when I'm having fun. If I'm just doing something for me, like if I'm just going out and playing around the golf and I'm leaving my wife with the kids, like for 4 hours, 5 hours, depends on, how slow the golfers are in front of you. I feel selfish, and I can justify going to get a massage or going to sit in the sauna for like an hour or something like that, or doing something nice for myself, but like never like go on a trip, or play around the golf on the weekend. I'm still in my life personally struggling with it. And I think it's tough when the kids are young too. But I also think that it has to do with how serious I am around life. And I probably need to loosen up a little bit. I probably need to allow myself to, get a little better at that and have a little more fun. Just because I know that, as much as, we're going to achieve in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, what is it all for if you didn't have a little bit of fun along the way? It can't be just the only ends to the means of like the achievements of financial. And yeah, so I know you're struggling with that too.
Yeah, like I think it's just like it's a foreign concept that I go play pickleball, for example. Love it. I do. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
There's no utility to that.
No.
And I do come away with that with higher spirits.
Yes.
And it does help, like it's a helpful impact, like in a positive way, on whatever I do next.
Yeah.
So like the proof is in the pudding, like it actually does work and you actually should take time to do that stuff.
Yes.
But sometimes it's hard to convince yourself when you're so busy. There is a lot of guilt involved. There are little kids. I think for anyone else, I would just be like, if it wasn't me, I'd be like, give yourself some grace, dude.
No, of course. The advice I'd give to anybody else would be exactly that.
Yeah. Give yourself some grace. You're doing just fine. And I think like that's the thing. Like we can optimize life as much as we can. This is probably a good jumping off point today.
Yes.
It's like we can optimize life as much as we want and possibly can. And that's great. Let's keep doing it.
Yeah.
But maybe, like I look at my great-grandfather or even my grandfather, lived a wildly different life, just on the farm all day, every day, hard workers. Maybe we should just take ourselves a little less serious.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
So what if it takes you an extra 2 years to get to that goal?
Yeah.
You probably have 30 more or whatever.
Yes.
10 more, 20 more, 30 more, 50 more.
Yes.
It probably doesn't really matter. It really is probably about the journey and not as much about the result. And like convincing yourself of that might allow you to take some time to do things that are not productive.
Yeah.
Who said life is only about being productive?
Yeah.
I think that's a good jumping off point.
I think so too.
Well, Rob, I appreciate you being on the podcast. Test podcast, but we're actually going to post it. It's been really fun today. You'll be hearing more from Rob in the future. Until then, peace.
Peace.
Thank you, Christian. Oh, no, really. Everyone calm down. Thank you.
Yes, easy.
Thank you for the applause.
The podcast on a jet.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.